Okay, it's 6 o'clock. Good evening, everyone. You may notice that we are without a chairman tonight. Councillor, or chair even, Councillor Cogshead, would you like to explain to members the situation, please?
Okay, so I'm standing in as vice chair for Councillor Hammersley, and with no chair also not coming tonight, with apologies put in, and it would be down to the committee to elect someone to.
If that's how I propose to Councillor Johnny Cogshead.
Seconded.
Think what happens.
So members need to appoint a chair for the meeting tonight, since neither Councillor Wetton nor Councillor Hammersley are present, unfortunately. So we have a nomination. Councillor Cogshead seconded. Can I put it to the vote? All those in favour? Thank you very much, Councillor Cogshead.
Well, first of all, can I welcome everyone, and bear with me, just get my faculties together. So I welcome everyone here present for this meeting in the Civic Centre, and to those observing the meeting on Microsoft Teams. Fire alarm procedure: there's no fire drills are expected this evening, so in the event of the alarm sounding, please quickly make your way out of the building. There are 3 exits from this room which members can use to vacate the premises. Can I ask if you could switch mobile phones off onto silent, or switch off and take any calls outside the meeting room? Do not leave any possessions unaccompanied, and or report any unaccompanied possessions. Remember to take any possessions with you when the meeting has concluded or as you leave the meeting. This meeting may be subject to filming or audio recording by others in the accordance with the Council's filming protocol. Anyone who remains in the meeting following this announcement will have deemed to have consented to allow their image to be recorded and broadcast. Can I ask, is there any apologies for absence?
Hammersley, Sean will be substituting Councillor Hammersley.
And I believe Councillor.
And the chair, Andy Wetton.
Yeah. No more? We'll move on to item 2 of the agenda. Is there any declarations of interest? None? Okey-doke. So item 3 on the agenda is minutes of the last meeting. I'll seek a proposer and seconder for the minutes of the Planning Application Committee held on the 19th of January to confirm the minutes as a correct record. Subject to any amendments for accuracy, the chair I will put the minutes to the vote. There's a proposer, Councillor Callaghan, Councillor Swinscoe seconded. Can we have a show of hands? Thank you. Any against? Lovely. So within the minutes, is there any matters arising? Councillor Tempest Mitchell.
Just one thing. Probably need pause on this. I received an email from an objector from the one at Church Hill last time round. And Claire Cook has clarified it, so I'll have to read the emails because Claire said something. Long story short, you see the draft minutes are available for the planning meeting for the 19th of January. Draft minutes, the recommendation with the new condition concerning the means of restriction of the site access and associated land stability of adjoining properties, that keeps wording dedicated to the Assistant Director of Planning, was proposed by Councillor Hammersley. Further telling everyone, if possible, to ensure the words in accordance with legislation, brackets, the Quality Act, Health and Safety at Work Act, or similar, otherwise we're going to continually be bringing up the legality of the building. Can it be raised at the next meeting today? Then Claire Cook has clarified something that I probably best to send it to Paul now, actually. In relation to Party Wall Act, which is a private matter between the applicant and the neighbouring property, which is controlled by building regulations. I'll forward it to Paul, then Paul perhaps could put it into the minutes, rather than reading the whole thing. That makes sense.
Thank you very much. Paul, did you want to?
Thank you, Chair. Members and the council generally are constrained by the wording put in conditions by government guidance and case law. In particular, planning conditions need to be necessary to make the development acceptable in planning terms. Government guidance is very clear when it comes to having conditions, including wording relating to different regimes. For example, licensing, health and safety, and the Party Wall Act. The government says that those kind of conditions are not necessary in planning terms. If there are other requirements that developers have to meet, such as the Party Wall Act, such as health and safety, then that does not need to be replicated in a planning condition. So I can reassure the residents that if there are other obligations that the developer has to meet during the course of their development, then that is a separate regime and that they will have to meet them separately outside of planning. I know that Phil has the wording to hand of the condition that officers propose imposing. Would you like reassurance just to hear the wording that is intended to be added to the permission?
Okay, there are two elements to it. First one is the condition we're proposing. I know the residents were concerned about the structure of the wall and the impact it's going to have on those gardens. So the additional condition states, prior to the commencement of the development on site, full details of the construction of the access road to include a specification for any retaining structures required to safeguard the structural integrity of the neighbour's site shall be submitted to and approved by the local planning authority, with the approved scheme being implemented prior to the construction of any dwelling on site. The reason for that is in line with paragraph 196 of the NPPF and policy N3 of the Mansfield District Local Plan. In addition to that, we're proposing a note to the applicants to advise them. The applicant is advised that agreement is likely to be needed under the Party Wall Act to construct the access. This is a private matter between the applicant and the neighbouring property. We did mention building regs in there, but we take them out because it's a separate issue. Thank you.
Are you okay with that clarification?
That's fine, Jack. I just wanted to bring it up because I've asked. And we dealt with it.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 4.
Chair. Just it's got Councillor Paul Henshaw as the councillor. I think it's Barton Link Forest Ward as well.
It's definitely Oak Tree Ward.
Yeah, it's on Oak Tree. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Link Forest starts about 100 yards further down the road.
Just that the postcode comes up as your ward.
No, it's definitely.
Yeah, can we have discussions to the chair if you don't mind?
Sorry.
Okay, so moving on to item 4. Planning application reference 2025/0618/RES reserved matters application following approval of outline planning application 2023/0258/OUT. Outlined application for some matters reserved for 19 number residential dwellings, including access for layout, appearance, scale and landscaping at Forest Edge, 19 Oak Tree Lane, Mansfield. And can I invite the officers to present the application?
Thank you, Chairman. As introduced, this application is for the erection of 19 dwellings. It's a reserved matters application, so the relevant issues for consideration are the layout of dwellings, scale of the dwellings, any landscaping, and the ultimate layout, which is the general arrangement of the dwellings in themselves. There are some adjacent issues which I'll discuss and touch on where appropriate. So just for broad clarity, so that the principle of development for residential dwellings on this site has been established multiple times. So there was originally the original host dwelling was a large traditional plot, which explains the sort of irregular arrangement and size. That was previously demolished. So there's been there's an older permission which isn't referenced in the report for 6 residential dwellings that was established, I think, in the late 2010s. That was subsequently that was never implemented. There was then in 2023 was an application for the current 19 dwellings was submitted. That was granted subject to conditions and a legal agreement for the erection of 19 dwellings. The important clarification there is that it's for 19 dwellings. That there are many permissions where it says up to 19. There was an indicative layout that was submitted with the application, essentially along the same lines as what is proposed here. So the principle of effectively the principle is for 19 dwellings that there's not a scope to consider 17, 18, 16. So the report has been based on the 19 dwellings is considered by officers to be acceptable. So the proposal is, so it's situated to the eastern side of Oak Tree Lane. So it's in the far east of Mansfield, so it's sort of the edge of Forest Town. So Oak Tree Lane's a large north-south arterial road which links the Crown Farm Way industrial estate to the north with I'm not 100% sure of the geography to the south, but it's the general. I think is that there's a large Tesco Extra to the south just off Jubilee Way. The area is almost entirely residential in character. So this is a classic sort of green infill plot, but for all intents and purposes, it's an infill. It's not. It would be considered previously developed. The tree, although the landscaping was reserved, there was a significant number of trees on site, but they've already been cleared as part of the outline planning consent. So the trees that are shown, the landscaping plans on the next one, all of the trees there are largely existing, and so there's no removal beyond what really proposed that was agreed at outline. So the general layout of the dwellings, as you can sort of see here, kind of just follow. Most of them are concentrated on the northern side, so they sort of broadly follow the curvature of the road. So the sort of first two, so there's different dots. There's a key on the next slide that kind of shows the sort of the broad housing mix. Really, it's a mixture of 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 bedroom dwellings. So there's about a 50-50 split. So as you can see, so about 50% of the dwellings are sort of the orange, purple, and then the yellow. So but larger detached dwellings, and then there's also a broader mix of 1, 2, 3 and bedroom dwellings, and then 3 bungalows that are on the south side of the road. So if you see the white and then sort of the 2 sort of reddish orange ones on the south side, they're all bungalows. There was I think a concern raised at outline about the impact on those neighbours to the south. So the roofs have been made hipped in that regard, and they're single story dwelling in their own right. I believe there may be conditions that would recommend some of the plot have been recommended to be restricted. I'd have to check those exactly, but yeah. So
Yeah, so plots 1, 2, 10 to 16, 17 and 19, they've all been recommended to have permitted development rights restricted for extensions, additional stories and outbuildings, just purely because of it's a mixture of to preserve the impact on the neighbours without further planning applications. They could effectively erect a number of extensions or outbuildings or additional stories without the need for a full household or application. So the recommendations are for those plots to be restricted. Otherwise, there's the general separation distance between the dwellings proposed and the adjacent dwellings, mostly on the links to the north, is nearly 30 metres. So, and the garden sizes were generally quite generous. 1 and 2 have only been recommended mainly to just reduce, just to prevent permitted development rights impacting on the dwellings that are marked orange, mainly plots 3, 4, 5, and 6. So they'd have to submit further applications for any residential extensions and outbuildings that would otherwise be able to be built without planning permission. So the impact otherwise, the layout was generally acceptable, subject to those caveats. Next slide, please. So this is just the general landscaping. So much of which is existing. So it's retained what's there where possible, and then where there are some opportunities, if you can see on the northern boundary, to try and soften the edge between the dwellings on the south side of the links and the proposed estate. There's been some new tree planting condition that but unusually, I didn't write the outline consent. There's a lot of conditions on the outline consent relating to long-term management. So this will form an approved drawing, and there's a condition relating to badgers, but that's not relevant. So the general landscaping was assessed as being acceptable because it's enhancing more or less what's left after the principle of development was granted on the outline consent. There's also a condition to do with the public open space, because again, one thing I spotted was the Section 106 agreement, compared to most, which they normally deals with public open space management on the legal agreement. So I've recommended the condition to do for the long-term management of the public open space. That's on the south side of to the west, to the left of the bundle. I'll highlight that with the mouse. Just so there's that cluster there. So that's going to be public open space on the site, and then there's that portion there. So one of the concerns raised was it wasn't really usable. I mean, I guess the response to that really is that it's mainly, I guess, aimed at the residents of that estate. I mean, there's only 19 units, so it's only a few hundred square meters. But if it was left unmaintained, there's I guess a risk that it could just become unsightly, and then which triggers antisocial behaviour risk. So officers have considered it necessary to recommend a long-term management to ensure the landscaping is maintained in an acceptable condition. Next slide, please. So this just shows that this isn't all of the house types. It's just a selection of the 3 through 5 bedroom ones, which are the largest on the scheme, just to give an indication. So materials wise, it's a relatively standard sort of brick spec that UPVC mix. It's outlined on page 16 of the agenda, which is cast white stone lintels, white UPVC, composite doors, black PVC casts, a guttering, engineering brickwork below foundation level, facing brickwork as a site specification in the plans, and then slate roof tiles, roller action garage doors, soft bit white UPVC fascia, which is broadly considered acceptable because it's consistent with the mixed resident. So the dwellings to the south are broadly speaking more representative of newer build dwellings. The ones to the north are more traditional, so that considered to be appropriate in itself. This one here is a typical 4-bedroom detached dwelling. I think there's another 5. There's one that shows 5 bedrooms as well. These are the larger ones with attached garage. There is a yellow type one as well with actually 1 plot, I think, on the far northwest corner, which is one that's recommended to have its permitted development rights restricted due to the concern with neighbours. This just shows this is a map showing the existing site. As you can see, it's mostly just modified grassland. Again, there's been little change in this over the last sort of 2 years, really, compared to my site visit initially, which I had a previous application. It was withdrawn last year, and then the most recent observations, which there's some photos show very little change. I think if we just go through the series of photos now. So this is a street view image showing the access. I think some of the objections, whilst they raised comments that were material to the principle of development, matters to do with the access, impact on highway safety, number of dwellings, where in terms of principle, were all assessed at the outline stage. So really the only thing that we were able to assess was the actual layout of this. It's all of the stuff within the site, not anything that's beyond it. So if we just go through the, I don't know what, so this is really just, if we, sorry. Just a general. So this is, I think that previous photo probably shows it all. That's just the access is a fairly straight road. So really the internal, it's currently fenced off. So it's currently just sitting there doing nothing, but currently it's effectively just a large open piece of grass. It's a fairly generous plot size, so there's not really any concerns about the scale of the layout is sort of overly dense, overly overbearing on neighbours, overly impactful in terms of amenity space. That was all considered acceptable. The reason for restricting some garden spaces is that if you allowed unfettered extensions, you could harm amenity, but that's why the condition's there to cover it. Generally speaking, this is over and above what you would expect for a larger scale residential new build. So generally speaking, we were very content with what was proposed. Any more factors that are relevant? Besides that, so the recommendation of this is to approve subject to the conditions recommended. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Dan, can I ask at this stage, I believe we've got, is it Claire? If you'd like to come over and give your, clarify your points. Yeah, you've got 4 minutes.
Thank you, Chair.
No problem.
Good evening. My name is Claire Thornton. I'm a planning consultant speaking on behalf of the applicant tonight. Having had a sight of the report prepared by officers for the committee, we've noted that there's been a number of concerns raised by local residents. So just want to touch on each of those in turn. The outline consent established the acceptability in principle of 19 dwellings at the site. The purpose of the reserve matters application is for the council to consider the positioning and style of those properties proposed. It's not to reassess the principle of development, as your officers have just highlighted. Regarding highways, the detailed site access arrangements were approved as part of the outline application, and the reserve matters proposals remain in accordance with those approved details. The Highway Authority has confirmed that they have no objections to the proposals that provide more than sufficient parking and turning and servicing arrangements within the site, all being acceptable. The site's not located within an area of flood risk, and the drainage strategy ensures that there are no adverse impacts on flooding. The County Council's flood risk team has confirmed that they also have no objections. A detailed landscaping scheme has been submitted, which includes a number of ecology enhancement measures and is in accordance with the Wildlife Trust request. The open space provided on the site is in accordance with the council's requirements. The proposals have been carefully designed and the buildings orientated to ensure that there are no adverse impacts on existing residential properties, and bungalows have been introduced where appropriate on the southern side of the spine road in the site. All of the conditions attached to the outline consent will be fully adhered to, plus those recommended by your officers on this reserve matters application. We note that the officer report considers that the proposals are acceptable and in accordance with all the relevant local plan policies and national guidance, and we hope that the committee can support the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claire. I'm just going to ask the committee members if they've got anything to ask Claire, and just reminding members that any questions should only be about the clarifying points that has been raised. Richard?
Thanks, Claire. Just one question really. The landscaping and the management of the grasslands, etc. Is that going to be a management company and are the residents going to pay for that?
Yes, that's correct. Yes, it will form part of a management company run area. It won't be something that the local authority will be taking on there.
And just to clarify, so will the residents be part of the management team, or will you get somebody like Meadfleet or someone like that, or specifically, will the residents be allowed to manage that management company?
To be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure. Officers have recommended a condition to be attached so that full details are submitted, and that those required details will be submitted and approved at the relevant point that it's required. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other members wish to ask Claire anything? No? Thank you very much, Claire.
Thank you.
So can I ask members if they've got anything to ask of the officer?
Just can you clarify, because I know you did say it in your presentation, can you just clarify that area that's at the end where the T junction is basically? What is in, no, the other end, that one. What's in place to stop the developers eventually going, oh, you know what, we'll apply for planning permission and put 3 houses on there?
Thank you, Ken. This was a common problem that it's something it's a niggling problem with the whole planning system. Unfortunately, I think that the general principle would be that in rural areas, when I worked in previous authorities, you would have to consider this. But I think it's a case of you have to just assess every application on its own merits. I think the reassurance I'd want to give here, I think, is that without assessing any hypothetical application, is that you'd have to look at the planning history and you'd have to look at what the impact on, I mean, there's some residential dwellings to the east. So if you bring in new dwellings there, I think you'd be undermining the principles under which this application was granted on. So whilst you can, I'd never like to say never on anything, but I think the principle is we've got an application to assess and we're assessing this application. We have got a condition obviously on relating to management of the open space. I think one thing that any application always has to have regard for is if they were to come in, you'd be effectively in conflict with a principle on this or a condition of this approval, and you'd obviously be impacting more trees. So I think it's again, you can never say never on anything, but I think that the ultimate planning principle is it's a case by case planning system. So we'd have to with that they couldn't, again, in theory, like an applicant could, but it'll be in the control of a management company. So I guess there'd be sort of planning restrictions, but also just practicality of this land in connection with making this development acceptable. So you'd effectively have issues there, but I wouldn't want to sort of assess hypotheticals just purely because we're looking at each application on its own merits. I hope that sort of.
Any other member? Richard?
Thanks. And Dan, just on that area in particular, condition 5, I don't know if we're allowed to do this, but could we add to that condition that the residents are allowed to be on the management committee for the management company in effect?
I think I think it would be in terms of the test for planning conditions. I think we can require broad details for all the obligations that I've always seen. I think it would be something we'd have to look at as to what's proposed in that condition. But from a professional perspective, I think mandating that residents are on that. I think it's again. Obviously I live on a new build estate with a management company, and they get. So our estate's sort of one of these sort of, it's about 10 years old, and we have this problem where we've got an area about the size of this, and it's managed by a management company. I think we can engage with the residents, as we do engage with them, but it's one of those sort of quirks of the national system, really. As much as you would like to say, yeah, we'll just kick the management company out. I don't know that it works like that. If I'm being real, as I have direct experience of this, so. But yeah, that would be my answer.
That's fine, thanks.
Any other members? Nigel?
So one more question. There's the main road, Oak Tree Lane. I know you said something about it's not anything sort of outside the boundary, is not what we're considering tonight, but are there any plans or anything been said about the fact that that's still a 40-mile-an-hour zone where that is, and the 30-mile-an-hour zone comes in effectively at the boundary edge just before the links? Is there anything that we could do to kind of push it so that the 30-mile-an-hour zone was moved further down the road?
As far as in terms of the number of, in terms of the dwellings coming, the cars coming to and from this site and cars moving along Oak Tree Lane, that principle's kind of been, this application we can legally only look at the reserved matters that the planning application allows us to do, which is all of the internal layouts. That would have been a matter for any conditions on the outline. Anything in the legal agreement and anything that's already been assessed as principle. I do know, obviously, Notts County, something residents, I guess, in theory, there are traffic regulation orders that run things that run independently of the planning process, which I guess members in theory could sort of engage separately of the process at. But I think, unfortunately, what we're assessing here is the internal configuration. So as much as you would want to, that matters. But it wasn't here when the outline was granted. But unfortunately, I think the principle of the wider area and the principle of 19 dwellings on that and the access has already been dealt with. As frustrating as that is, it's a matter that would be external to this decision.
Okay.
Any other members? No. Okay, thank you very much. So can I seek a proposer and seconder to the recommendations contained in the report? Richard Temple Mitchell, seconded Jack Stevenson. So could I put that to a vote with a show of hands?
We don't get to debate it.
Oh,
Sorry.
I'm glad you're here. So committee to debate the motion. Nigel?
Thank you. I remember when this came up before and I was against it, and I said 19 houses was too much on there. Having looked at that plan, it still looks like there's far too many houses on that patch of land. I'm not convinced that they're not going to at some point come back and go, we'll build some more houses at the end. The fact that we can't change it, that it's still a 40-mile-an-hour zone there, and the difficulties with turning right into it off Oak Tree Lane. There's so much that's wrong with this development that I can't possibly vote for it.
Okay. Anyone else? No. So, can I invite, if the officers have got anything to confirm, any details that's been debated if needed? No?
No further comments based on further consent.
Okay, so we'll take it to the vote. And can I have a vote of show of hands? All those in favour? All those against? And no abstentions? Thank you. So I'll confirm that the result is 8-4, 1 against. And that is for the recommendation to grant approval of reserved matters of the application subject to the conditions with delegated authority to the Assistant Director of Planning, Planning Manager or Development Management Team Leader to make approved minor changes to the planning conditions for application number 2025/0618/RES. Thank you. And moving swiftly on to agenda 5. So I believe I'm correct in saying that this is for noting. It's the planning appeals decision. And do we need a show of hands? No?
Chair, can I just ask a question about this, please?
Yes.
I've noticed it's for the events. Can I just ask, it's been refused, the reasons are stated quite clearly. What's the next step for this day nursery? What will they need to do?
Yep.
We'll now need to progress enforcement action. And we'll start that this week by serving the planning contravention notice, which will then collect information and then we will take it from there. From that, obviously the inspectors come back and says, yes, they can have something, but not that fence. So it needs to be something that's more sympathetic. I think the background that members need to understand on this corner is that we've had similar applications for various corners, all of which have been refused already, all of which have gone to appeal and all have been dismissed at appeal. So it's not the first one, it's about protecting that corner and the visual amenity of that particular corner.
Okay, and I'm assuming that anything that would be considered would still making sure that the children are safe within that. Otherwise and everything.
It's how they intend to do that. They've chosen that block and put the fence up without consent. That's why they're in the position they're in now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And finally, the appendices of the Human Rights Act and use classes to ensure that the committee notes the appendices. Thank you very much. Have a enjoyable evening. I'll close the meeting.
Thank you, Chair.
Oh.
Oh, it's not.